The night wind carried the smell of smoke and wet earth as Draven Ashcroft walked through the ruined border village, his boots crushing broken fence posts beneath him. He was the Alpha King of Veyrath Moon, a kingdom built on strength, feared by every pack for 300 miles. His warriors moved behind him, collecting whatever supplies remained from the raid, but Draven barely noticed them. His senses were pulling him somewhere else, toward a scent he had never known before, sweet and warm, like sunlight caught in the middle of winter. He followed it without meaning to, his feet carrying him past broken carts and frightened villagers, until he stopped in front of a small wooden house. A girl stood in the doorway, clutching a torn shawl around her shoulders. Her hair was dark and tangled, her eyes wide with fear, but even so, something inside Draven's chest turned over, sharp and unfamiliar. Mate. The word rose in his mind before he could stop it. Every alpha knew the feeling the moment it happened, that pull that could not be denied, the invisible thread tying two souls together forever. Draven had waited for this moment for years, half hoping it would never come, because he had heard the old stories, the ones his grandmother used to whisper by firelight, the Crimson Curse. A mark passed through certain bloodlines, said to bring ruin to any king foolish enough to claim it as his own. He stepped closer, and that was when he saw it, a faint crescent-shaped birthmark, resting just below her collarbone, pale silver in the moonlight. His breath caught. It was real. She was real. The girl's name, he would later learn, was Celine Voss, a servant girl from the outer village, orphaned young and raised by an aunt who barely spoke to her. She had no idea what the mark on her skin meant. No idea that it made grown warriors flinch when they saw it. No idea that it had just changed the course of her life forever. Draven's council elders confirmed it within the hour. The mark was unmistakable. The girl carried the Crimson Curse, and legend said that any king who accepted her as his mate would lose everything he had built, his throne, his pack, his very life. Draven had spent his whole reign proving that fear had no place in his kingdom. He had fought battles others refused to fight, made decisions others were too afraid to make. But standing in front of Celine, feeling the bond settle into his chest like a stone dropped into still water, he felt something he had never felt before. Fear. Not of an enemy he could see and fight, but of something ancient and unknown, something that could not be defeated with strength alone. So he did the only thing his fear allowed him to do. He rejected her. He gathered his warriors and the frightened villagers together, and spoke the words that would humiliate her in front of everyone, declaring that he would never accept a cursed mate, that the bond meant nothing to him, that she was nothing more than a servant girl who happened to share his blood's reaction. He watched her face as he spoke, waiting for tears, for pleading, for anything that would prove he had made the right choice. Instead, Celine simply lowered her eyes, folded her hands, and said nothing at all. Her silence unsettled him more than any scream could have. He ordered her banished to the outer territories that same night, telling himself that distance would weaken whatever the bond was trying to build between them. He told himself it was the wise choice, the strong choice, the choice a real king would make. He was wrong. Months passed, and Veyrath Moon began to change in ways Draven could not explain. Storms came earlier than they should have. Crops failed in fields that had never failed before. Rebel packs along the borders, packs that had once feared to even look at Veyrath Moon's lands, grew bold, testing the borders, testing his warriors, testing him. Draven told himself none of it was connected. He told himself kings faced hardship all the time, that this was simply a difficult season, nothing more. But at night, alone in his chambers, he could feel it, a hollow ache in his chest where the bond used to sit, growing colder every day, as if something inside him was slowly being carved away. His closest advisor, an old wolf named Torin, who had served 3 kings before him, finally said what no one else dared to say. "You cannot outrun a bond, my king. The curse is not punishing you for claiming her. It is punishing you for abandoning her." Draven wanted to dismiss the words, but he could not stop thinking about them. He thought about Celine's silence, the way she had not begged or cried, the quiet dignity in her eyes, even as he humiliated her in front of his entire pack. He had expected weakness. He had found something else entirely, something he did not have a name for yet. Desperate to fix what he had broken, Draven sent scouts to the outer territories to find her. He told himself it was only to complete an old ritual that would formally sever the mate bond, freeing him from whatever was slowly weakening his kingdom. He told himself he only wanted his strength back. But when the scouts returned, they brought troubling news. Selene had vanished. No one in the outer village had seen her in weeks. Some said she had wandered into the old forest, near the mountain ruins, and never returned. Others whispered that the forest itself did not let people leave once it decided to keep them. Draven went himself this time, refusing to send anyone else in his place, though he could not explain even to himself why it mattered so much that he be the one to find her. The forest was unlike anything he remembered from his youth. The trees grew taller here, older, their roots twisting above the ground like veins beneath skin. The deeper he walked, the quieter the world became, until even his own breathing sounded too loud. He found the ruins near sunset, a temple half swallowed by moss and vines, stone pillars cracked with age but still standing, still proud despite centuries of neglect. And there, in the center of it, kneeling before a broken altar, was Selene. She looked different. Her hair had grown longer, wilder, and there was a light in her that had not been there before, something calm and steady, like still water hiding a great depth beneath its surface. She did not turn when he entered, though he knew she could sense him. "I found what the mark truly means," she said quietly, her voice carrying easily through the silent ruins. "It is not a curse, Draven. It never was." He stepped closer, though something in the air made his instincts scream at him to be careful, to move slowly, the same way a wolf moves around a fire it does not fully understand. She rose to her feet, and finally turned to face him. Her eyes had changed, no longer the soft brown he remembered, but a pale silver that seemed to hold light even in the fading dusk. "Long before the Ashcroft line ever ruled Veyrath Moon," she said, "there was another bloodline. The Voss line, the true moon sovereigns. My ancestors ruled these lands with a bond to the moon itself, a power passed only through those marked with the crescent seal. When your family took the throne, they buried our history, twisted our bloodline into a curse, so no one would ever question their right to rule." Draven felt the ground shift beneath him, though nothing physical had moved at all. "The mark is not a curse," Selene continued. "It is a warning system, left behind by my ancestors, meant to expose any king unworthy of holding power, any king cruel enough, fearful enough, weak enough to reject his true mate, instead of standing beside her." She stepped toward him, and though every part of him told him to stand his ground, to remain the Alpha King who bowed to no one, his knees buckled beneath an ancient force he could not fight, could not even understand. He fell before her, not from magic alone, but from the crushing weight of finally understanding the truth. "I came here to end the bond," he admitted, his voice raw in a way it had never been before. "I thought severing it would save my kingdom." Selene knelt in front of him so they were eye level, her silver gaze steady and unafraid. "The bond was never the danger, Draven. Your fear was." For the first time in his life, Draven Ashcroft did not know what to say. He who had commanded armies, who had never once hesitated in battle, found himself utterly without words in front of the woman he had once dismissed as nothing more than a servant girl carrying bad luck. "I was wrong," he said finally. "I let fear decide something love should have decided instead." Selene studied him for a long moment, and he could see her weighing his words, deciding whether they held any truth, or if they were simply the desperate excuses of a king trying to save his crumbling kingdom. "You humiliated me in front of your entire pack," she said softly. "You banished me because you were afraid of a story you never bothered to question." "I know," he said, "and I cannot undo it. But I am asking you to let me try to make it right." The forest around them seemed to hold its breath. Selene rose slowly, and Draven remained kneeling, understanding somehow that this moment required nothing less from him. "I have the strength now to take back what was stolen from my bloodline," she said. "I could walk into Veyrath Moon and claim the throne that was always meant to be mine. I could remove you from power with a single word. You know this is true." "I know," Draven said quietly. "But that is not the kind of ruler I want to become," she continued. "Power taken through fear only creates more fear. I watched what fear did to you. I do not wish to become the same." She extended her hand toward him, not to pull him up in triumph, but simply in offering. I will not force this bond, Draven, not the way it was forced upon me in silence and shame. If you wish to stand beside me, you must choose it freely, with full understanding of who I am and what I carry. Draven looked at her hand for a long moment, then lifted his eyes to meet hers. I choose it, he said, his voice steady despite the weight of everything unfolding around them. Not because of duty, and not because my kingdom is failing. I choose you because somewhere between my fear and my pride, I fell in love with someone I never gave the chance to know. He took her hand and rose to stand beside her, not above her, not behind her, but beside her, as an equal. They returned to Veyrath Moon together 3 days later. Word had already spread through the pack about strange lights seen deep in the old forest, about the crescent mark that had once meant banishment now glowing bright silver beneath the moon. When Draven and Selene walked through the gates side by side, the entire pack gathered in stunned silence, uncertain of what they were witnessing. Draven stood before his people, Selene at his side, and spoke the truth he had spent months running from. I was wrong to fear her, he said, his voice carrying across the crowded courtyard. I let old stories and old fears convince me that her bloodline was a threat instead of a gift. She is not cursed. She is the rightful heir of a line far older and far wiser than mine, and she has shown me more strength and grace than I have ever shown in all my years as king. He turned to Selene, kneeling once more before her, this time entirely by choice, entirely from respect. I ask my pack to recognize her, not as my mate alone, but as the true sovereign of Veyrath Moon, ruling not beneath me, but beside me. A long silence followed, heavy with disbelief, until slowly, one by one, the pack began to kneel as well, warriors and elders and villagers, bowing before the woman they had once been taught to fear. Selene looked out over the kneeling crowd, her silver eyes bright with a mixture of sorrow for everything she had endured and hope for everything that could still come. She reached down and helped Draven to his feet, refusing to let him remain lower than her for long. We rise together, she said, loud enough for the entire courtyard to hear. Just as we will rule together. The kingdom of Veyrath Moon entered a new era that night, one built not on fear, but on truth. Selene's bloodline, once hidden and feared, became a symbol of strength restored, a reminder that true power was never meant to dominate, only to protect. Draven, humbled by the mistakes of his past, became a wiser king, one who listened before he judged, one who understood that courage sometimes meant kneeling before someone stronger, rather than standing tall out of stubborn pride. And beneath the silver light of the moon, the Alpha King who once feared his cursed mate, stood proudly beside his true queen, grateful that fate had given him a second chance he never deserved, but promised, for the rest of his life, to honor.